The stage lights felt too bright for someone who had spent most of her life trying not to be noticed. As she stepped forward, the massive AGT logo glowing behind her, the girl's shoulders tightened, as if she were bracing against a sudden wind. Her shoes were worn at the edges, carefully cleaned but unable to hide the years they had carried her through dusty streets and long walks home. The microphone looked heavy in her small hands. She adjusted it once, then again, her fingers trembling despite her effort to keep them still. From the judges' table, the first impressions formed quickly and quietly. A few exchanged glances that carried unspoken assumptions: too young, too nervous, too ordinary. Simon Cowell leaned back slightly in his chair, arms crossed, his face unreadable but distant. The audience buzzed with soft murmurs, not cruel, but uncertain. They had seen hopefuls like her before: sweet stories, fragile confidence, performances that ended almost as soon as they began. The host smiled gently and asked her name. Her voice came out barely above a whisper as she answered, her accent thick, her English careful and slow. Each word sounded practiced, rehearsed late at night in front of a cracked mirror, repeated again and again until she believed she could say it without breaking. When asked where she was from, she mentioned a small neighborhood in the Philippines, far from the bright city lights most people imagine. The cameras zoomed in as she spoke, catching the nervous swallow in her throat. She explained that she came from a poor family. Her father worked irregular jobs when he could find them, her mother took in laundry, and some nights there wasn't enough food to quiet the hunger. Singing, she said, was something she did at home, sometimes to help her younger siblings sleep, sometimes just to forget how hard things were. She had never had formal lessons. No stage training, no coach, just a voice and a dream she wasn't sure she was allowed to have. As she spoke, the audience listened politely, but the air didn't change. This wasn't the dramatic hush that comes before magic, it was the kind of attention given out of kindness, not expectation. One judge smiled sympathetically, nodding as if already preparing gentle words of encouragement for after the performance. Another tapped a pen lightly on the desk, eyes drifting toward the clock above the cameras. Simon leaned forward slightly. "So why AGT?" he asked, his tone neutral, almost tired. She hesitated. The pause stretched just long enough to make the judges uncomfortable. Finally, she said that she wanted to help her family. That she wanted to show her siblings that dreams weren't only for people with money. That maybe, if she was brave enough to stand here, something could change. Her honesty was disarming, but it didn't erase the doubt. Simon nodded once, slowly, then glanced down at his notes. The silence that followed felt heavier than applause. The kind of silence that suggests an ending rather than a beginning. "Okay," one judge said kindly. "Whenever you're ready." She took a breath, but it didn't fill her lungs the way she hoped. Her eyes scanned the theater, thousands of strangers, cameras everywhere, judges who could end everything with a single word. For a fleeting moment, fear nearly won. Her mind flashed back to home, the thin walls of their house, the sound of rain dripping through a leak in the roof, her mother folding clothes late into the night. She remembered singing quietly so the neighbors wouldn't hear, afraid of being told to stop dreaming. A cough echoed somewhere in the audience. Someone shifted in their seat. The moment teetered on the edge of impatience. Simon raised his hand slightly. "Are you ready?" he asked, not unkindly, but firm. She nodded quickly, almost too quickly, afraid that if she waited another second, her courage would vanish. She adjusted her grip on the microphone, feeling the cool metal against her palm. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure it could be heard through the speakers. Before she could sing, one of the judges asked what song she had chosen. When she answered, eyebrows lifted. It was a bold choice, far too big, far too emotional for someone so young, so unsure. A few people in the audience exchanged looks that said the same thing: this might end badly. Simon tilted his head. "That's a very difficult song," he said. "Are you sure?" She nodded again, her lips pressed together now, determination quietly replacing fear. She didn't explain that she had sung this song 100 times while washing dishes, that she had whispered it into pillows when she felt invisible, that every lyric felt like it had been written for her life. She simply said, "Yes." The judges leaned back. The host stepped away. The music cue hadn't even started yet, but the atmosphere felt strained, like a rope pulled too tight. This was the moment when many auditions fell apart, when nerves took over, when voices cracked, when dreams ended with polite applause and a soft rejection. In the audience, a woman clasped her hands together, hoping for the best but expecting the worst. A man shook his head slightly, already resigned. The cameras captured it all. The doubt, the uncertainty, the almost forgotten girl standing alone at center stage. She closed her eyes, not to be dramatic, but to block out the fear. For a brief second, the theater disappeared. There was only darkness, only memory. She imagined herself back home, barefoot on the cool floor, singing softly while her siblings slept. No judges, no lights, just her voice and the truth she carried inside it. But before a single note could escape her lips, the tension thickened once more. Simon shifted in his seat, pen hovering, ready. One wrong sound, one shaky breath, and this would be over before it began. The girl stood on the edge of rejection, unaware that the very thing everyone doubted, the quiet, the nerves, the fragile appearance, was what made the moment so dangerously close to breaking, or becoming something unforgettable. The first note left her lips so softly that it almost disappeared into the vastness of the theater. For a split second, it seemed like the sound might get lost among the lights and seats, and a few people leaned forward instinctively, straining to hear. Then, as she drew in a deeper breath, her voice grew stronger, steadier, as if something inside her had finally unlocked. The melody settled into the room, warm and clear, and the quiet that followed was no longer polite, it was attentive. Her eyes remained closed, not out of fear now, but focus. With each line, the nerves that had tightened her shoulders began to loosen. The words flowed from her with a sincerity that felt untrained and therefore undeniable. This wasn't a performance shaped by technique or showmanship, it was a confession sung aloud. The audience stopped shifting in their seats. The coughs, the whispers, the restless movements all faded away. At the judges' table, the change was immediate. One judge straightened, eyebrows lifting in surprise. Another's smile faded, replaced by concentration. Simon, who had been leaning back moments earlier, slowly moved forward, resting his elbows on the desk. His expression changed, not dramatically, but enough to be noticed. The skepticism softened into curiosity, then into something closer to disbelief. As the song built, her voice revealed a depth no one expected. There was a strength beneath the softness, a controlled power that rose naturally instead of being forced. When she reached a higher note, it rang out clean and unwavering, filling the theater with a sound that felt far too big for the small figure standing alone on stage. A ripple of gasps spread through the audience, followed by the unmistakable stillness that comes when people realize they are witnessing something rare. She opened her eyes briefly, and for the first time, she saw the effect she was having. Faces in the crowd were frozen, mouths slightly open. Someone in the front row wiped away tears without bothering to hide it. The sight almost broke her concentration, but she steadied herself, gripping the microphone just a little tighter, grounding herself in the song. The lyrics seemed to carry her story without her ever having to explain it. Every struggle, every hungry night, every moment of doubt was woven into the sound of her voice. It wasn't perfect in the technical sense, there were tiny imperfections.